Hey, welcome to episode 45 of the Reluctant Leader podcast with Paul Jenkins. That's me. And today I want to talk to you about something that caught my attention years ago when I was watching an episode of Shark Tank and how God brought it all back to my memory as I was hanging out in the 13th chapter of Mark. It sounds super religious, but it's really powerful truth for leaders, whether you're in church, business, or any other organization. So let's jump into it and talk about why it's important to know the condition of the people you're called to lead. Yeah, I'm not sure how many years ago it was that I was watching Shark Tank. I went through a period in my life where I loved watching that show. There was something about people coming out and pitching their companies and their ideas, and it forced me to get better about talking about, well, my vision, right? The things that I was hoping to see happen in the church that I pastor and in people that I lead. It's just watching somebody else articulate their passion challenged me and challenged Wendy to also kind of hone in the language behind ours. I remember one time somebody came out to pitch their business, and what they're trying to do, of course, is get these sharks, these investors, these millionaires and billionaires to give them so much money for a percentage of ownership of their company. So you can imagine the people with the money are asking a lot of tough questions. One of the tough questions isn't really that tough, and it's something that was asked of every person that came out and pitched an idea in the Shark Tank. They would always ask, tell us about your sales, your numbers. Like, tell us about the how many units have you sold? What's the cost per unit? What's the profit margin per unit? And they asked one of the contestants on the Shark Tank that question, and that person kind of stood there for a few seconds saying nothing, and then they finally said, "I don't know." And I believe it was Mr. Wonderful, one of the sharks, who said, basically, that's the death sentence for any pitch. If you come in this Shark Tank and you don't know your numbers, there's no way I'm investing in your company. I'm out. And then all the other sharks were out as well. There's a lesson to be learned there, right? And it's not like, dive deep into all of the things. You might have people on your team that know the numbers and know all that. But I think the real lesson is, do we know the condition of the people in the company and the business and the churches that we lead? I was struck by this language in Ezekiel chapter 34. It's a lot. I'm going to read it to you. And it's just starting in verse 1. And Ezekiel is writing down what he senses that what the Lord's telling him. And this is specifically a message to the priests of Israel. And when I read this at the end of 2024, it just was strong, and I'm a leader, I'm a pastor. So when I read it, I thought about my church, people in my city that I have influence over, that I have responsibility for, and just listen to what happens as I go through these verses when the shepherds aren't paying attention. That's what I want you to catch. The word of the Lord came to me, Ezekiel 34, Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to them, this is what the Lord God says to the shepherds. Woe to the shepherds of Israel, you who have been feeding themselves. Shouldn't the shepherds feed their flock? You eat the fat, wear the wool, and butcher the fattened animals, but you do not tend the flock. You have not strengthened the weak, healed the sick, bandaged the injured, brought back the strays, or sought the lost. Instead, you have ruled them with violence and cruelty. They are scattered for lack of a shepherd. They became food for all the wild animals when they were scattered. My flock went astray on all the mountains and every high hill. My flock was scattered over the whole face of the earth, and there was no one searching or seeking for them. Basically, what the Lord was saying to the shepherds was, you're not keeping watch. You're not paying attention to what's going on with the sheep that I've entrusted you with. And because of that, wolves have come in and they have begun to harass and wound the sheep. I noticed in Mark chapter 13, I was in there, I'm reading through through the New Testament twice this year. And I noticed in Mark 13 that the disciples asked Jesus about the end times. Like, when will all these things happen? What will be the sign that they're going to happen? And Jesus starts his teaching, his answer of those questions in verse 5, and he ends it at the end of the chapter. It's the entire chapter. He starts it with the same word that he ends it with. He said to them, watch out that no one deceives you, in verse 5. And at the very end, in verse 37, he says, what I say to you, I say to everyone, watch. 9 times between those verses, Jesus talks about watching, being on guard, seeing, looking, being alert. He's telling us to watch, to be aware. Don't lose sight. Don't lose track of what's going on around you. Be in the moment so that you can help others who are also in the moment. There's a passage in Nehemiah where Nehemiah is going out to, in chapter 11, he goes out to inspect. I'm sorry, did I say 11? It's chapter 2, verse 11. He goes out to inspect the walls at night. He goes through all of Jerusalem to see what are the conditions of the walls in Jerusalem so that he will know what he needs for the project that he's going to take on, the rebuilding project of Jerusalem's walls. So many times in the Bible, it talks about like your enemy prowls around. So keep watch, be sober minded. And I just want to encourage you as a leader, man, be alert. Know the condition of the people that you're leading. Don't micromanage. That's not what this is about. But it is about being involved, asking the questions, and listening for the answers so that we can help people accomplish what God's called them to do. So practically speaking, maybe the next time you're with the people that you're leading, whether it's in a church or in a business, maybe you're a teacher, it's a classroom, maybe you're a coach with a team, why not just ask people, how are you? Tell me what's going on in your life. What are you hoping for? What are you dreaming for? What are you struggling with? What area in your life could I help you be better in? How can I pray for you? These are all questions that allow leaders to inspect the walls, to be vigilant, to keep watch, to not take care of just themselves, but also be aware of what's going on in the people that we're leading. And I believe this, that if we'll do that, not only will we be better and more faithful leaders, but the people that we're leading, they will be healthier as a result, because we will actually know how they're doing and we'll know how to lead them even more effectively. Wow. 45 episodes. We're just 5 episodes away from the big 5-0. Probably going to do a couple giveaways for that episode, so be listening for that. As always, I'd appreciate it if you would share this with somebody that you know it would help, especially if you found value in it. Would you mind maybe rating and reviewing this podcast? That helps us be found by more people. And I'd love for you to go to my website, pauljenkins.tv. I'm writing once a week. I'm also sending out a weekly newsletter every Monday called The Launchpad. It's just fun, little quirky newsletter that gives you some things to think about, some tools that I think will help make you better. It'll definitely give you something to laugh about, even if it's just a corny dad joke. But it'll help your week get off to a really good start. As always, keep doing what you're doing. Give God your yes and trust Him to take care of the rest. We'll see you next time.